It's time. It's time for MS Paint. Yeah, yeah. So this is like let me draw a little day 9 landscape here. All right. So here was like my little island, and it looks kind of like a shoe. I think that what I would say is, generally speaking, I just want more texture. Oops. No. Control Y. Bum ba dum bum ba. Texture. Do 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 do. And then so this area was kind of like meadowy, and then there was this sort of like the Black Forest. It kind of like did this sort of thing. Like, and I think like my island is not drawn to scale and stuff. I also think that there was like the meadows sort of like kind of did a little strip thing like this, so sort of like meadowy, foresty. So okay, so let me say what I think. Damn it! So I really like texture to an experience. And one of the most perfect textured experience I have ever played in a procedurally generated landscape is Factorio. Because Factorio, so much of it is about how are you going to work up the automation chain. So, I mean, at the very start of the game, you are dumping coal manually into smelters and pulling it out manually. And then you start to get some electricity and some conveyor belts. And you're doing some very basic management of electricity and adding conveyor belts. And then you're starting to create some automation for what you need for Science 1. And then you think, okay, now I want some automation for a bunch of turrets and create a ring of ammo for that. And like create a ring of ammo for your turrets is like a completely different problem from the make a bunch of automated factory stuff for Science Pack 1. And then as I'm proceeding on in Factorio, I have to work towards Science Pack 2, which requires some different types of processing. And then all of a sudden, you start to have to worry about fluids. So right when you're getting comfortable with how conveyor belts and assemblers work, you have fluids that you have to start managing. And then you start to run out of resources, so you have to figure out how to import more resources in, and that's when trains come in. And so like there's this continuous growth in Factorio over what is the problem that you're facing. And I'll stress that what I was talking about is it was variations and differences in things that were changing. That's what I mean by the texture. I like the word texture because it's not about it's variety within the same, as well as different things. Like, I need to bring coal to my factories here. One element to that is literally making a conveyor belt go there. Another element is getting enough throughput of the coal to be able to support everything. And then another thing, in another layer of texture, is getting your trains automated and set up enough so that way they can remove the coal from the trains that are coming long distance, so that way they can then eventually feed into your final shit. And when I was playing this game, we'll use red to talk about where I was. I felt like there's sort of. Let's see if I can list off all the layers right here. Let's list off the layers. There's the crafting. There's that layer. I want to build more and more and more and more stuff. And then there's combat. And sort of alongside that, there's a little bit of the RPG style elements, like you're improving at bow shooting and stuff. I don't know. This feels. Improvement always felt significant relative to other things or whatever. So I'll actually lump this in with collecting. Crafting and collecting. And then there's exploration. Exploration. And so when I started off and I was right here, I mean, very quickly I'm learning, how the hell do I build stuff in this game? This seems... alright, this is kind of interesting. And then, I'm starting to realize there's different things I need to collect. There's the obvious, like, okay, I'm realizing now that water is where flint is. And I'm realizing that, trees obviously you cut down for wood, but like, oh wow, here's some good locations for water over here. And I was like actually getting a good sense of this meadowy area that happened at the start while my little campsite was set up right over here. And so I started to encounter different types of the Grey Dwarfs going up. I was collecting all sorts of different things, and I was starting to, like, you saw this arc happen for me over the first 5 hours of playing, where I was just like, it felt like there was enough new things happening. Like, right when I felt like I was used to the combat of the Grey Dwarfs, I saw that there was this weird elk battle here that I really enjoyed. And then I remember I wandered down here, and there was like a troll here, and I was like, dude, I'm not even going to fight that. That's scary. So I just like got the hell out of there. And then I started to want to... I was using this as like my guide. Okay, how am I going to continue to motivate myself? What's going to make me want to go explore? Because, I mean, like in my first playthrough on day one, this is about as far as I went. I think I took like a weird rambly path along here along the shore and then back home again, but I didn't really cross this line. And what kind of wound up happening is for those first 6 hours, all of this was marvelous. I felt like there was lots of new combat, there was new, again, I don't really care too much about this one, but there was new combat, there were new objects to collect, which made me come back home and craft, which set new goals for me to go explore certain areas, and then I started to realize, I need to re-backtrack into this area to really collect a lot of leather. And, again, the forced retraversal into old areas with new goals, I actually found really fun a little bit. Excuse me. I found this kind of fun to realize, oh my gosh, I really need to start to be cognizant of birds, deer, and boars. But then I came back today, and what I felt is that, like, the green area felt a little different from the other green area, hence why they're both green. But, I mean, you can't just keep piling Grey Dwarfs at me. The Grey Dwarfs and the skeletons, for instance, felt identical. Like, fully identical. And what I mean is that, like, if the art of the enemy is different, but my play pattern with respect to the enemy is not that different, nothing really changes. What game is this? This is Valheim. We've labeled it as Valheim. Yeah, I mean, pretty much I would let them whack, and then I'd go up and I'd hit them, and then I'd let them whack, and I'd go up and I'd hit them. You know, I kind of think back to, I think it was actually in Ocarina of Time, where there was an enemy that if you got too close to it, it would like put a little shell up. Or the sort of inverse enemy that if you were far away, it would always have its shield up, so you had to go up and do melee. You know, some sort of variety. Even the trolls themselves kind of felt samey. The huge trolls felt very similar to the other ones. The troll was a little bit of a spike of moment. And I think that in terms of the combat, I want more... I just wanted a little more variety as time was going on. And with the crafting, you'll also note that the crafting kind of slowed down a little bit. But I think the biggest thing that I was feeling, and this happens to me a ton in all sorts of procedurally generated games, is that just the exploration is like the same all the time. And here's kind of what I mean. Like, let's draw a landscape. Like, okay, so let's imagine that everything to the right here is the land. All right, like, I feel that what happens is they go, okay, let's start off. We have a forest, and then, or you know what, we have the ocean. And then, you know what, we'll make islands. And the islands kind of have this... They have, like, different shapes to them. But, I mean... Oh, there we go. But, I mean, like they're all sort of equally looking sized islands. And then the game says, okay, well, let's make some meadowy stuff. Like, so, you know, then maybe this is a meadow, and maybe this is a meadow here, and this is a meadow, and, you know, maybe here's Sean's starting island. And then, okay, so, oh, God, let me tell you, is this not a child's MS Paint problem? Where you try to fill and just, oh, God. And, you know, like this, oops, I did the wrong color. So it's like, okay, cool, then, you know. All right, then, you know what, let's have like a sort of one Badlands area in each island. And this just happens if you just take a bunch of random numbers and put them in and put in enough space, everything starts to just, like, look the same. I love using MS Paint, man. What I would want out of this is, like, just more steepness in the variable controls to where, like, first of all, let me speak at a global scale, right? Let's imagine that there was some sort of fixed shape of a starting island that was very simple. It just had a meadow and a black forest, and that was it. You always start off on this potato, okay? But I would love if there was, like, some weird archipelago that could spawn, maybe. Over here. And, in fact, a lot of this is, like, a weird sort of swamp land, and this one has fucking lava. Okay? And then I go to, like, a very large island that actually has, like, a river cutting through this whole thing. Yeah, and then maybe there's a second river. Oh, I used to love to draw little maps as a kiddo. And how tight would it be if there was, like, an actual, like, this area was, like, very different from any place you'd ever been before that was maybe anywhere you'd been before. And, you know, Renee Regine says, do you think this game would benefit from having a handcrafted world rather than randomly generated? Well, I think it's, like, what I've seen out of procedural generation is that there's a lot of, like, known good handcrafting things. Like handcrafting level design ideas that just don't, that incidentally don't wind up getting incorporated into, like, level design in procedurally generated games. Because, like, okay, so what am I talking about? I'm talking about more at a global scale. But, like, if I look at an individual, like a piece of terrain that is on, let's make this actually gray. If I'm just looking at, like, if I'm just looking at, like, a piece of terrain that's, like, nearby, like, let's just take a very zoomed in area. Let's say that and I'm just going to draw it in squares since this is really easy. Let's say that this is generally sort of flat, even, and open forest area. And then let's suppose in this area there is actually some specific shape to it that creates some different gameplay experiences. So now you have this sort of area, and we'll draw like this, and I don't know what these lines specifically look like. Maybe this is ways that movement is obstructed. Maybe all of a sudden down in this area, this is, like, really deep, and maybe these are super steep cliffs, and there is particular types of movement that you can't do in certain areas that you can do in others. Like, I just want to feel like I'm doing different things in each area. And I actually think Diablo 3 does a pretty good mix of this kind of thing, where, like, I mean, I know Diablo 2 better, but, you know, you'd have, like, a level that would have lots of spindly little areas like this, that you'd have to like traverse across that were like super thin. And then you'd have other ones where like you would have a kind of tight area with a choke, and then it would open up into a little area. And there were traps here and here and stuff. Like, yeah, Path of Exile does this shit. I just want the exploration. I kind of want this feeling of when I walk and I'm like, whoa, this area is very different from that area. J. Rycross says, I feel the procedural generation of this game is somewhat counterintuitive to the system they have built. Difficulty progression in this game seems to be biome-based, so we end up seeing a lot of the same stuff in the early game, as they don't want to put a higher level area too close to the start, so the game's variety suffers pretty quickly. Well, I want to stress some difference, because, like, and let me say, none of this is, here's the problem with Valheim. This is like, here's what I want to see and want to experience in the future of Valheim, because it's, like I said before, it's like very clearly has a concrete vision that's working on that it asserts it wants to build on. What I want is, like, again, if there's an area that is, here is your nearby medium area. Here's your nearby medium area that has medium enemies and is medium difficulty and has medium tier crafting or whatever. If this is the area, you know what would be kind of cool is if this area that I'm labeling in red, maybe here is spawner 1, spawner 2, spawner 3. And in every medium area, there is this red land area that is... I'm actually going to fill this in, right? Every person has a medium area that has something like this, that has... Well, what color were the spawners? That has like 3 spawners. And there's a perimeter that is patrolled by the enemies. I'll actually draw it out like this. There's a perimeter that's patrolled by the enemies, and they have special AI functionality here, and this is one of the boss areas here. And how does it work? Well, I mean, again, it's just effort. It's just some effort to get the AI and the feel right of some sort of procedurally, like this component pops in. Ghost Stalker, this sort of note thing that you keep doing is like cracking me up. I'm going to back up for a second because I got distracted. Let me back up again. Okay, so if this is the medium area, in the current game, the way it works is, here's a point of interest. It's a spawner. But it's like there is a point that's interesting, whereas this little purple thing that I've drawn is like a space that is interesting. And this space kind of has some sort of event and feel to it. And then maybe there is a special type of craggy area where the trolls live. And there's particular types of boulders that you can sneak around, where your sneaking is suddenly very useful. And the trolls, though, are really hard to beat in here. And now all of a sudden, again, you're still using procedural generation. You're still saying, okay, we can have this sort of like gray rocky area. We can still have this sort of like, you know, gray beard fucking fortress area. And then you also have some sort of like, let's say that there is a swamp here where movement is really, really challenging and different. And the movement in this area, suddenly it's less about the enemies that are in this area, and it's more about the fact that you have these like really spindly little areas that you can stand on. But you know how in the game if you step on water you're wet for 2 minutes and you can't really do anything? And let's imagine there's like logs that sort of like are dead in here. Maybe you might want to like go through this area in a different way, and it messes with your movement such that it changes combat encounters with the same kinds of enemies. The swamp biome actually works like that in Valheim. Sure. But I want to stress the difference between I'm sitting down to play for a few hours, and in this area, here is a region with different types of movement and considerations. Here is a region with different types of movement and considerations. Here's a region with a different type of movement and consideration. As opposed to what I feel like, here's Sean's ideal. All right, let's take this. Fucking put this over here. Let's shrink it. I like my illustration. I don't want to erase it. I feel like my experience was, all right, bam, and then let's smash on some enemies. All right, let's do some copper. Copper's going to be orange. And let's put some dungeons. You know, it like the... And all the movement in all the areas is more or less the same. Symphony says, Sean makes the world's grossest pizza. Indeed! And so, if this, for instance, let's say that this is the early game area that I just played in, and, okay, someone said that there's a swampy biome. Okay, well, let's imagine that we have, like, now a sort of swampy area that has little, you know, little islands of noteworthiness with logs in them. And I'm not going to draw the logs, but let's just imagine that they're there. Like, all right, you need to go through this area, and then again, there's going to be enemies here, 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 here. Like, when I am going to spend 6 hours here, and then spend... Whoa, holy shit. And then spend... Oh, Jesus. And then spend 6 hours here or something like this. Or, I guess I should be more accurate. I spent, like, 8 or 9 or 10 hours here, and I still feel like I need to spend more time to move on, and then more time here. Whereas I just want little, like, just more texture that's going on within a given area. And I don't have too many friends that have worked on procedural stuff, but every one of my friends that has ever worked on something procedural talks to me about this problem that happens where it's just like an even distributed sameness, where it's sort of like, okay, what you really need is, and again, this is like not complicated what I'm saying, I'm just stating essentially, if you have little miniature sub-elements, if you have 2 of them or 1 of them, you wind up with this. But if like this sort of thing, if there were like 70 of these types of things, and in your given starting area, it drops like 3 of them in, you know. And I want to stress the difference between a point of interest and what I'm talking about, which is interesting areas with interesting movement and interesting play pattern changes. If we come back to this, let me delete this and let's draw another. You know, no, let's move this. Let's actually shrink this down. Okay, cool. Let's take our swamp area and let's move it here. Right? So we're saving all of our art because we care about our art. If this is my starting area, okay. Imagine what my play patterns were. I was running back and shooting arrows, and sometimes running up and doing some hits to people when there were small numbers. If you have, and I do mean point very literally, if you have like a point of interest here with a big red blob, well, does this point of interest change meaningfully my combat? Does it change meaningfully my movement? Does it change meaningfully the things that I might bring to it to solve the problems relevant to that thing? Well, in my experience, it's been no, with one exception. I need a torch to go into dungeons, and that's it. That's completely and totally it. So if you say, well, I put tin here and copper here, and I put a tomb over here, and here's a spawner here, and here's a troll here, and here's a tower here, and there's another copper thing here, and there's a tin thing there. I'm kiting every single one. I'm taking all of everything that's in all the locations. The only thing that the points of interest really provide is, in some locations, there's different things. which is good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it can't be the only thing to keep my interest. I wanted to make one of these smelting things. I needed smelter cubes. I remember the Certlin cuboids. I don't remember what the name of the things were, but it's what you need when you're in the dungeons. In the dungeons, there's some stuff that you need. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go there to go to that thing. Ghost Stalker. So I think that's what my articulation. Now that I've sort of thought aloud for a moment, I think that there is crafting in my mind right now is the through line. I'm going to go out and find materials to help me build more advanced stuff. And that creates the motivation loop. Well, I want to go to this new area so I can get steel to help me build a bicycle. So I can bike around while I'm shooting birds. Crafting seems to be the central through line. And therefore, what's going to change the experience is how my movement works, how my combat works, how I bring different collections of stuff to whatever location I'm heading to. And at the start, I was establishing a pattern for just generally going out, and that was fun. I was establishing the pattern of getting this much food, clearing out my inventory in this way, making sure I had enough arrows. That sort of collection process was fun. And then I would do my little run, shoot nonsense, and that was good. And nothing in the game ever sort of threw me off kilter in that pattern. If, for instance, let's say if you went into the swamp, you got mucky, and if you were mucky, you needed to pour, vinegar on your shoes to, be able to move again and stuff like this. Well, all of a sudden, I might need to go out and collect that sort of thing in that area, so that when I go to the swamp, I have enough vinegar to pour on my shoes so I can keep moving quickly. Or if there's certain enemies that are vulnerable to fire arrows instead of frost arrows. Now I need to go farm for the fire arrow area. And again, the idea is that, okay, then again, if in the frosty area, I need to be really sneaky, and if in the fire area, I need to have lots of health regeneration, then I have different play patterns in those collection areas that then make me want to... I just suddenly realized I'm tired. There's different play patterns in those areas, and there's different enemies that I have to defeat in different ways to be able to get what I need to go to the new area to get myself. That's the sort of stuff that gets me really excited, and I feel like this game had one big one of those that was awesome. Thief Law says, I'd argue that sort of exists with how important poison resist potion / meat is in swamps and the frost resist needed for the mountain. And again, I would note that could be true later in the game. And I'm not necessarily commenting on anything I didn't play. I'm mainly talking about the first island that I played, the experience of that. I just wanted more things that were changing up my play patterns, causing me to think in different ways, move in different ways, experience different things, etc., etc. That's my story. I'm day 9. And these are my thoughts. All that said, I actually found it to be really lovely in terms of the first 10 hours. It was just good shit. Blink says, is it possible there's a pacing issue? Yeah, no, it could very well be that it took me 10 hours to do what everyone on their team takes 2 hours to do. And they're looking at me and they're just like, this fucking idiot. And that, while it doesn't change anything I said, it could mean that they're just like, oh, okay, we just speed up the drop rate of whatever. And then it's done, right? And then it's easy. I actually heard someone who was working on an RPG system for a game, And like the players were talking about all the problems with it, and the designer had a suspicion, so the designer just doubled the XP gain rate, and everyone's like, "You fixed everything! It's incredible!" You know, because they were saying things like, "I feel like I want more abilities in the game. I think players should start with at least 4 abilities. You know, I just don't feel like my choices matter. I feel like I only really can pick 2 things to do." And my friend was like, "I need to just give them more experience, because then they'll just get more choices and get more abilities." And then everyone was like, "Yeah!" And it literally was, he just doubled the number and it was fixed. This was really funny. Death Row Gus says, "Sorry I missed the subtrain the other day. Better late than never, I suppose." Well, Death Row Gus, thank you warmly for the 5 subs, as I was about to dip out. I have just hit Friday at 7:01, and I'm a poopy bear. And I'm going to go, I'm going to eat the rest of my burrito, and I'm going to walk my dog. Yeah. Pump it up. Pump the jam. Walk your dog. All right. I'm loopy. I'm going. Much love, everyone. It was a great week, and I look forward to seeing you next week, where we're going to be doing Enkadia, a cyberpunk point-and-click adventure game, on Monday. On Tuesday, we're going to be doing Kaldheim, not Valheim, but Kaldheim. And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is going to be Escape from Tarkov Week, where we're going to be going live at 10 a.m. Pacific, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, to get our ass annihilated with our dear pal Sacriel. It could, I might not like Escape from Tarkov, in which case we'll just switch back to Magic. But we're gonna try to give it a go. We're gonna try to give it an honest chance. And also, DK30 is going to start on March 1st. I'll talk more about that next week because I'm very tired. But goodbye.